everyone. Thank you for tuning into the New York Irish Center's Between the Lines, a conversation series with today's brightest thinkers, innovators, and literary minds. My name is Stephen Long. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture with the New York Irish Center, and we're thrilled to be joined today by award-winning journalist and writer Sadhbh Walshe, who will be speaking with Cian O'Maidin, CEO of the software developer NearForm, which is helping to curb the spread of coronavirus by developing a contact tracing app here in the United States, as well as back in Ireland and in Europe. With that, welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here today. I will hand it over to Sadhbh.
Thanks, Stephen, and hi, Cian. It's great to see you. So just to, the reason you're here today primarily is because your company, a relatively little company in terms of the software world, has created COVID app that is being used across the island of Ireland, in Scotland, in New York, in New Jersey, in other states that you'll tell me about. And it's quite a phenomenal achievement that a little company could pull that off. So before we talk about the app, maybe you'll tell me a little bit about NearForm and the company you started in Ireland a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I started NearForm in 2012, and basically, myself and my co-founder were very interested in a new open source technology that had just had become a thing the year before. We thought it was going to be a big deal out there, and we kind of excitedly started this company, thought we were going to be millionaires in 12 months kind of thing. And started it at Waterford, which is the most unlikely place to set up a tech company you can possibly imagine, because there's no business here as such. But we bootstrapped the company, had a couple of tough years. The first 2 years are pretty tough. But the bet that we made on the technology really paid off. So we kind of set up the European conference on the technology, and then in late 2013, early 14, Walmart and PayPal adopted it and very publicly adopted the technology, and all of a sudden it started going to the mainstream. So from there, then we just had a kind of a huge lift in our business. We're actually the biggest contributor to the project now, and it's the most used runtime on any of the major cloud platforms. That's we're a 150 person company headquartered in Tramore in County Waterford. We've been doing business all over the world almost from the get-go,
Tell me a little bit about what is that technology that was the game changer for you? What does it do?
Yeah, so essentially the language for building web apps has always been JavaScript. It's kind of the standard language of browser technology. A guy, actually a New Yorker, back in around 2010, he came up with a way of making JavaScript run on the server side. It used to be Java and other languages, so you had a kind of a siloing effect for building web apps, and of course web applications, mobile apps, and all that kind of stuff have really become the primary thing that we're building now. And so he invented a way of doing JavaScript on the server side, called it Node.js. So Node.js is the name of the thing. And what that's meant is that developers can now build entire applications much quicker than they could in the past. So it really means if you're trying to build and launch kind of compelling, adaptable new experiences for consumers and the like, you can do it really quickly using this technology. It's very scalable, and so that's kind of why we got into it in the first place.
Yeah, great. And so from what I understand, then you've been, the company's been growing and your business has been growing, but you actually got the call from the Irish government or from the Irish Health Service to try and develop a COVID app. Why did they call your company? Why were you guys?
It's a kind of a funny one, really, for NearForm. We never really had any Irish customers because the US and Europe were the real markets, and so we kind of had somewhat of a an insider's reputation in Ireland for doing, high scale work in the US. Like, so we worked on like the New York Times, a bunch of like we built Vogue magazine, GQ, the New Yorker out of Tramore County, Waterford.
Wow.
Doing work for ADP, IKEA, Uber, like all these crazy like multinational companies and stuff. So we would have had a kind of an insider reputation, and so when they were kind of back in March when the world kind of stopped for a while, the first app that was launched, I think, was one out in Taiwan, and the folks in the health service saw that app, and they kind of wanted to build something similar to that. So they asked around, and a couple of people that they asked, the name came back to NearForm were the best people in Ireland that they should talk to about it. So I got a call. I was sitting watching, I know, was I watching rugby or something? St. Patrick's Day weekend anyway. I was sitting at home and I got a call or text from someone saying, would I talk to someone in the HSE, and spoke to the guy on the Sunday. And we stood up a small team, a couple of designers started working on it Sunday night. We had like a full prototype, testable prototype ready in about 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. We're really good at what we do.
Yeah, it would seem so. Well, I'm impressed with the Irish government though, I remember we were in New York anyway. I remember being sent home from the office on Friday the 13th of March. That was kind of when things really ramped up here. And they hadn't quite ramped up to the same extent in Ireland. So they were quite ahead of the curve, it sounded like, to moving on that. So good for them. But so you got the app, you got a prototype together fairly quickly, and then I'm sure rolling it out isn't a simple thing, and getting people to use it and all of that. So tell me a little bit.
There were many adventures between doing the prototype and launching it. I have to say though that the team that we worked in, like I never wanted to work for government before, because they just, my mindset was that it was going to be very bureaucratic and slow, and government software was always going to be terrible and all this stuff. But actually the team that we ended up talking to working in the HSE were absolutely top notch, and so I guess from that perspective, they really protected us from all the noise and all the noise in the system as they were trying to get us to focus on building this thing out, and they worked really effectively. So as we were developing the app, first of all, Google, Apple exposure notification technology did not exist back in March. So we had V1, testable V1 of the app ready. And then a couple of things happened. One is the data protection people started screaming about, what are you doing to consumer data, all this type of stuff. And that gave a bit of a pause for, we need to think about this. How are we going to deal with this? And then the second thing that happened was Apple and Google started to make noise that they were going to do something, like actually build the technology into the OS. And so with those two things happening, like we didn't launch. We really wanted to launch, but we didn't. And so the process from there to launching on the July the 7th involved reworking the app, working with Google, Apple as they were developing this technology, because that even what they had said they were like launching didn't really exist until like late in May. And so we worked with the folks in the HSE and Google and Apple to build the app, build the prototypes. And then along the way, the biggest things were engage with the data protection people. So a report, it was about 250-page report, was written by the folks in the HSE, the DPIA, or Data Protection Impact Assessment. That was published, and they gave the Data Protection Commissioner time then to digest it and to respond to it and to work things in. And this was done in advance of launch, so you can imagine the compressed timelines that you're dealing with. We also pushed then to open source the app, so that the tech community could look at it and see, like, there's nothing to hide here. This is bona fide. Also then on top of that, advanced behavioral studies. So they did, accelerated behavioral studies on the app. So they really looked at the language. Am I protecting myself? Am I protecting somebody else? If I just, if we graph like the OR rate in the app, or the number of downloads, or the number of infections, what's going to play the best with people. So this was all done, furious, at a pretty furious pace. through May and June, and then eventually we launched early July. So there was a huge amount of work that went into it. But I mean, the data protection work that went in was regarded as the gold standard internationally. When the app actually got launched, really set the kind of template for everybody else to follow, you know.
And how does it work then? So people, download it, and what can they, tell me just the basic functionality of it.
All it does is, at the core, exposure notification. What it does is, if there are two phones that are within like 2 meters of each other for 15 minutes, the phones have this this exposure technology now built into them, and the phones broadcast a random identifier which changes every 20 minutes or so, or they change pretty regularly anyway, a random number. And any phone that's within range of that for 15 minutes at a distance will then store that random ID. It doesn't know what phone it came from. The numbers are like so long that it's impossible to kind of hack them or whatever. And so that number then stays on your phone for 14 days. They're kind of deleted 14 days, with a 14-day rolling window. And so if I get a positive test result, and you've got my random ID on your phone, I'll get a notification from the health service asking, giving me a code which will allow me to upload all my random numbers on my device to a central server, and then all the other devices check that on a periodic basis. So somebody will be told that you were in close contact with somebody who's tested positive, and that's how it works. So it's totally anonymous, and totally decentralized in how it works. So that's the kind of core technology. What we've seen is kind of from a rule of thumb perspective, I think governments are seeing that you have like manual contact tracing, and then you have exposure notification. That exposure notification, I think in some cases, is generating about 50% more close contacts than the manual thing. So what that enables then is, you have like these asymptomatic people who might be kind of highly mobile, who actually have COVID and are walking around. Enable to capture that and then notify that person the instant that somebody else has tested positive, and so it stops them from transmitting it further, So that's the kind of core part of the app. And then the other piece is that there's like a daily check-in. So, it just asks you every day, you feeling well, feeling unwell. If you're not feeling well, it'll take you through a couple of questions and might tell you to maybe get a test and not go out. And it gives you a bit of data then about what's going on locally, so you can see where the infection rates are. So kind of gives you a little bit of a kind of sense of what's going on. And yeah. So
then it was launched in what we call the Republic of Ireland, and then there's obviously Ireland. There's also another part of Ireland which is under United Kingdom jurisdiction, and the UK has had an interesting response. I mean, Scotland is doing something different than England is doing. Northern Ireland is doing something different. So. And from what I understand, your app is being used in Northern Ireland. Is that correct? And it was adopted there quickly. So how did those two governments work together to make that operable?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, all the health departments across Europe are talking all the time. There's a network where they have officers around e-health and communication, and they're all in constant contact. And so as Ireland had a brilliant response in general to the pandemic. We kind of took it seriously. We locked things down. Yeah. And then the next step was like that we launched this app that looked like it was going to be very successful. And so up in the north of Ireland, they were kind of looking at, are we going to build an app from scratch again? Or and the HSE had like shared the source code. It had already been tested, verified, all that kind of stuff. So it just made way more sense for them to take that and run with it. And so they picked it up. We helped them then to kind of work that into their own app design. And so North of Ireland were the first two governments in the world where the actual apps interopted worked together. So if you're living up north, you come down south, the thing still works with the apps in Ireland and vice versa. And then kind of on the back of the success of the launch, really, then Scotland came on board. They just liked the design of the app, the simplicity, the success, you know. And then Jersey came on board, and Gibraltar as well. That was kind of in the kind of local context.
Yeah.
I think just in all cases it was very compelling because we built something that worked really, really well, and it was open source. You know, it is a lot less risky than something that hadn't yet been delivered and had yet to be verified and tested. It was more compelling to take something that already had, you know.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more about open source in a minute. But first of all, so I understand that the government, the Westminster government in England, launched their own app and spent a huge amount of money on it, and apparently it isn't working quite as well. Why would you? Do you have any idea why that is?
So they the first attempt at building an app back before the exposure technology existed, and that was never going to work because without the Apple Google technology, the Bluetooth thing was never going to be able to function properly.
Right.
And so they were already they started working on that super early, like before we started on the Irish app. We were lucky enough that with the data protection and other issues that came up, that we had a bit of time to pause before launch, whereas they went live, and the early tests really didn't work out well, and they started getting slated by the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. And so we were unlucky that that we didn't end up working with them. It was actually, they didn't know about us, and they'd already started working with another firm to build the next version of the app. You know, I'd have to say I've looked at the source code and the design for the UK app. It's actually really, really good. I think probably some of their problems are not it's not to do with lack of craftsmanship or quality, you know, on the design. I think there are other factors at play there, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so is it kind of a done deal that they're going their own way now, and you know, or
they launched their own app probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago,
right,
and it seems to have been working pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now the app is, I've downloaded the New Jersey version on my phone. You can also download a New York version, Pennsylvania version, I think, Delaware version.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So even though I live in New Jersey, I spend most of my time in New York, and I was wondering which one should I download? Does it make a difference? You know, etc. So I assume all those apps are working, you know, are interoperable. And so
yeah.
How did that come about? Like, how do you get all the state governments on board and all of that?
So for us, actually Pennsylvania were the people that started to talk to us first of all. They'd seen there was something got out in the media about NearForm building the Irish app, and so they started talking to us. They spent a bunch of time then talking to the folks in the health service here, and they got really comfortable about how good we are, our capabilities to deliver, etc. And then the conversation really came to, well, actually, what about our surrounding states, you know, and can we create a corridor, you know, that this thing is going to work across all these states? And because we'd already figured it out in Ireland, north of Ireland, it was like, it's kind of a no-brainer really to work with us on it, you know. In terms of New York versus New Jersey, which app is better? I don't know. I think the New York app might have a few extra languages in it.
Right.
I think there's like 9 or 10 languages in the app now. So I mean, if you want a version in Urdu or Mandarin, like maybe then that's the one for you, you know. I don't know.
Well, I do actually, you joke, but I do have my phone set to different languages all the time, and my Facebook page and my Twitter, so that my brain is getting that boost. So I might download an Urdu version. But that's cool. But so then it sounds like, you know, that so obviously there were different sets of creators or developers or whatever working on the New York version, and but
No, we built all those apps
oh,
ourselves. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And but you just do regionally specific things that make sense for the region.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fundamentally, the core technology and the check-in and the view of what's going on locally and the exposure notification and the kind of app design and flow it was pretty mature by the time, you know, we started working with the public health authorities in the US. So why break something that works already? Like, and it was really then just localizing it, plugging it into the, you know, the back end systems and the manual contact tracing, and you know, because that's different everywhere. But it's kind of impressive. Like, I mean, you know, on March 20th this year, we'd never heard about this technology before. I got a text message, and then the team at NearForm, I'd say it's no more than about 15 people in total. We built and deployed the apps for all of these governments at scale, and even kind of more interesting is that we've never met one person from any of the governments in person. So we do everything remotely.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of shows what can be done when you have
Yeah,
to get things done, you know?
I know. I suppose it's like, I mean, you to some extent have worked remotely for a while, but it's probably a good thing that we're all, you know, handling that better now. Suddenly we're all kind of, you know, a lot more people are able to do that. So it's not so strange.
It's not
Um,
easy, but you
yeah,
know, it's you can kind of, we've been doing it for 7 or 8 years now. So you just have to think a little bit about people and their context and what's going on in their house, and check in on your staff
yeah,
and all that stuff. But it's, you know, if you don't have to, like, you don't have to drive to the office, or you don't have to get transport to the office, and you know, a bit of meeting people is nice, but probably in a work week context that you could get a lot more done and get home earlier if you didn't have to, you know, travel all the time and meet as many people. So, you know,
yeah.
works well.
No, I'm loving it. I have to say, working from home. So what are the plans then for, like, I assume you'd like other places to adopt it. How many people approximately is it reaching, or how many users do you have? Are there other talks going on to try and get it up?
Yeah. We've a couple of governments in I think because so we've turned this into all the source code is available. There are documents for other developers if they want to pick it up and customize and make it run in their own countries and stuff. I know New Zealand and maybe some other countries in that part of the world are deploying it or working to deploy it. And we're also we're talking to quite a number of other states in the US at the moment. So we're kind of probably getting to the point where we're gonna spin up and roll out this thing in a bunch of other parts of North America.
I hope
Obviously,
so, because there's a lot of infections here that need to be traced. Yeah.
it's on fire at the moment, yeah. And I mean, that's actually the name of the open source project is COVID Green. And so it's green for Ireland, but it's also green because we want the map to go back to the color green again, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it should be. I mean, in all likelihood, I'd say probably at least another 10 states are gonna press the go button fairly soon. And just once the election stuff is kind of been a bit of distraction, but it's kind of moving forward as well, despite all that.
Yeah.
Um,
And so finally, then you talked a lot about open source, and I'm not a technical person, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching won't be either, but I have some idea of what, the language that would mean, that you're sharing technology or sharing code or something. But so perhaps you could talk a bit about that, but also I did see something you did where you were talking about open source being art, and tech, the software developers being artists, and some of them starving and trying to find ways to support them and stuff. And I thought that was very interesting, because I think we all we have a perception of the software community as being billionaires and millionaires and all doing very well, but sounds like there's a whole boatload of people who are just creating stuff, sharing it, and so on. So
Yeah. I mean, I suppose on the first point, an analogy I like to use is you know, a piece of software is like, you know, I want a piece of software that does whatever, you know, a booking system for my theater. And the analogy is, it's like you want me, the software developer, to build you a house, right? And then all the bits that go into building a house, you have like the blocks and the screws and the scaffolding and all these things. So all those pieces, if you just want the house, you don't want to own the designs to the cavity blocks or the scaffolding and all that stuff. And so open source, the analogy is that all those pieces that you can assemble and put together are shared. And so, you know, if I'm building a weird custom kind of house and spending a lot of money, I might need a custom cavity block or custom whatever. If I open source that, somebody else might pick it up and start using it, and maybe they might start maintaining that thing as well. And so, like, you kind of share all the stuff that's common, that's not strategic. You know, in the house context, in the context of the COVID app, you're actually sharing the entire system with all the functionality, all the features, etc. Like, and it's just it's kind of a philosophy of sharing. It means that you don't, like, for us, we don't charge like everybody like the entire cost of the development. We charge a smaller amount, government on government, and all the new features that they want get put back into the main thing. So it just gets stronger and stronger over time. Like, if government picks it up now, they get the benefit of all the work that New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, all that effort is there, and it's free, you know. On the open source's art side of things, I mean, you know, you can kind of tell the how I always think with society in general, like how we treat our artists is a real sign of how mature we are as a society. And it's the same with software. Like, I mean, you know, you have that you know, there are many people who are artists and creators who just they're not interested in money. Like, it's the thing that they have a vocation about something that they do. And so, you know, I think the thing that's personally interesting to me is that the Node project, it is the most popular runtime, like, on the cloud, right? Like, previously it would have been like Java was like the most popular runtime in the cloud. That was built by like Sun Microsystems with 1,000 engineers and billions of dollars of investment. Node.js was actually built by like some mad scientists, like PhD dropouts, and people who were just really into what they were doing in their bedrooms in the evening time. They had an idea of something new that was going to happen. They found each other. They started working on it together with no guarantee of payment, no guarantee of money or anything. And it just hit. It turned into something that was the right thing at the right time, and it's now really taken off. But, like, you know, I think people can overlook the fact that the people who created the technology, the people that are artistic by nature, may end up getting nothing from all the work they've put in. And it's not like that they're looking for it in advance or whatever. But I think we should really think about how we can, like, create some kind of an economic connection between the value that comes out of something and the people that help to create the value, you know.
No, it's, I mean, I love the concept of sharing and you know, and all of that, but it is kind of sad to think that it's the brilliant minds behind the stuff that aren't necessarily going to cash out, you know, and someone else will cash out.
But I mean, it's like, you know, it's down to kind of, you know, motivation at some point. And I just think that it's not, I don't think the people that came up with the ideas are sad per se, but I think it's sad if the people who commercialize the ideas and they don't think about them. I think that's sad. And there's a certain lack of you know, sustainability and justice, you know, in some levels on that. Like, you know, I think that's really important to think about that, you know.
But you guys in NearForm, I mean, that's open source has been your thing from the beginning, right? And the company has grown, and
we're completely insane, right? Like, we have 150 people, we're the biggest contributor to the #1 runtime in the cloud. We do more on it than Google or Amazon or Microsoft or IBM. And like we've kind of become a magnet for communities in the web ecosystem. So like the modules and the technologies that the people at NearForm build, I think they're at like 1 billion modules a month downloaded globally that have been written by people at NearForm. So like Netflix use bits of our stuff, MasterCard, Apple, PayPal, everyone's using it, like, you know, but like we're giving it away for free. And we're kind of prolific contributors to this thing or whatever, like, and we don't, unfortunately, we don't get $1 for every download, but
but you get the COVID contract, COVID app contract and other things. And then just one last thing before I'll let you go. So I was surprised to learn when I was just looking some stuff up about you that you nearly went to art school. So you almost went. So and also you said somewhere that you try to hire people at NearForm who are on a mission and who do want to do something. Is that really still what drives the company?
Totally. Like, I mean, I like, if I wanted to make money, I could have gone to Goldman Sachs or whatever, like, you know, and the reality is in the age that we're living in, the internet age. And so the people who have the real talent and vision, you know, the internet is going to grow across without control for our entire lifetime. So we kind of have a choice as to where we work, you know, and so if you do have a bit of purpose and a vocation and a real love for what you do, then, and you're good at what you do, other people that are similar are going to want to work with you, like, and there's a real buzz then from working with people that you learn from, you get on with, and you know, you do things that you find meaningful and interesting, like, you know, and that isn't that what it's, I mean, that's a dream, like, you know, coming from, like, you know, I always think of my dad. Dad is like 78 now, and when he was lucky enough as a teenager to be able to go to college back in Ireland when nobody went, and he wanted to do a music degree. His dad was like, no, you can go and get a job in a bank, or you can do a proper degree, you know. And he had to work. He was in his 50s by the time he got into a place that he really wanted to be from a career perspective. And it's like, well, like, we don't have to, we have this on a plate to be able to kind of really choose. We're really lucky to find something really meaningful that we do, like, so, you know, that's really important, like, and it's a lovely thing if you're lucky enough to be in that position, you know.
Well, on those words, thank you very much, Cian. It was a fascinating conversation. I hope more states pick up the app. I hope more people download it. And thanks for talking to us today. I'll just turn back to Stephen to say goodbye. Thanks, Cian.
Thank you so much, Sadhbh, and Cian, thanks for being so generous with your time today. That was a fascinating conversation. I hope everyone finds it as insightful as I did. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Once again, this has been the New York Irish Center's Between the Lines, a conversation series with today's brightest thinkers, innovators, and literary minds. My name is Stephen Long. Thank you.